Hi, everyone. It's Tessa.
And Joe.
From the Unveiling Paradise podcast.
Tessa, summer is almost here, and so many of our listeners are about to have their epic destination wedding.
And we are so excited for you guys.
Before the big day, guys, we want you to make sure you listen to these 3 episodes.
Episode 62, Deep Diving Your Wedding Ceremony.
Episode 53, Questions Your Wedding Guests Will Ask.
And episode 31, the final countdown to your wedding day.
And if you're planning your wedding here in Hawaii, hit us up and ask us about our Unveiling Paradise podcast promo.
Happy planning.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Unveiling Paradise podcast show. Hello, Tessa.
Hey, Joe. Hi.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm super.
You are super. Okay. We have a great show today, and this is one that I like to think about chronologically, if you don't mind.
It seems a little stressful to me, but go for it.
Okay. We are talking about when should you book your wedding vendor. So I think that there is some sort of rhyme and reason pecking order in terms of who you book first, who you book second, who you book third. Like today, we want to kind of take a deep dive into that. What is the most important first steps to book? Who's next? And then kind of how that follows and how that plays out.
So I agree. There is definitely a certain order that you want to book your vendors in. But I think once you kind of get some of the key vendors, it can kind of shift around. And I will explain a little more. There's, you can have multiple vendors and it can be so overwhelming. So what we want to do today is kind of break it down and say, what are those essential vendors and what is the order that you want to book? There's many reasons why you're going to book one over the other, whether it be budget constraints or just general vision or desire. And I think those are the things that really kind of matter when we're looking at the order of booking vendors. And I think that's what we want to talk about today.
Totally. I mean, we talk about this all the time. When you first start planning a wedding, it is totally overwhelming. It's stressful. You're like, oh my gosh, I have to book my venue and my florist and my photographer and my, my caterer and my photo. And it's I think it just can become a roadblock for people to even say, let's start. It's just overwhelming. So let's take a deep dive into this. Let's step back. Let's take the stress out of this. And that's our goal, right? Is to try to think of how do we get through planning a wedding, make it fun, and lock in those key vendors and figure out when we need to do that.
So let's get started. Welcome to Unveiling Paradise, your go-to destination wedding podcast. I'm Tessa, wedding planner and owner of Fred and Kate Events.
And I'm Joe, wedding and adventure photographer of Joseph Esser Photography. We are based in Hawaii, one of the biggest, most popular locations for destination weddings.
We want to share our real-life experiences with you, give you insight from a professional's perspective, and still make sure you're having fun in the process.
We're huge believers in the fact that planning a destination wedding can be one of the most amazing experiences, and we want to bring you along.
We're so excited to talk with you about weddings, Hawaii, and everything else under the sun.
So pack your bags and let's get started. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, here we go. Tessa, is there a right or wrong order to book your wedding vendors?
That's a good question. And the answer is sort of. There is no specific way where every single person books the vendor in the exact order, but depending on your wedding, there is a better way to do it.
There's kind of a rhyme and reason too.
Yeah,
right?
And I think that's what we want to talk about today, right? What is that rhyme or reason? How do we manage your vendor booking order without completely overwhelming?
So how do you breach that conversation with your couples that are like, okay, I'm planning a wedding. What do I need to do? I'm super excited. So where do we start?
We talked about this in a previous episode, but I want to kind of reiterate my point. When we start the planning, we need to talk about budget and kind of your vision.
The B word.
The B word that nobody wants to talk about, but we have to know truly, where do you want to spend your money?
Yeah.
Because
totally.
I think that will really dictate the order of booking your vendors.
That dictates everything from
Right?
everything that follows from there. I agree with you. I think that is essential. If you haven't had a conversation about budget, you really shouldn't be planning anything yet. You shouldn't be booking anything yet until you have that kind of squared away, or at least thought about.
A general budget, yes.
Is that harsh to say?
A little.
Yeah, but I think it's true, right? I think it's really true because you can't book your venue if 99% of your money for that venue eats up your entire budget, right? Maybe you have to think about what is a better venue for what you're working with, right? I think it says brutal. That's really brutal, but I think it is really the beginning piece, right?
It is. So it's true. So the budget plays a big part of what are the other vendors. Some venues, for example, include, again, at a hotel, it includes your plates, your forks, your knives. Other venues that are more a la carte, you're renting all of that. So we have to include those into the budget. That will also then involve additional vendors. And those vendors have to be included earlier on versus later.
So before you even start booking a single person, budget.
Yeah.
Okay, got you. Okay, perfect.
So speaking of budget,
Yeah.
I know you know me.
What?
And I love a game.
More games. Okay, what do you got?
So I have a game. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's quick. I promise. It's going to be Would You Rather Budget Edition.
Okay, would you rather budget edition? Okay.
So what that means is I'm going to say, would you rather spend your money on this or this?
Are you trying to make budget sound fun? Because I'm all
Sort
about
of.
it.
Yeah. Money's fun, right? You got to understand a budget to get to your vendor bookings.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so, and are we giving explanations or are you just choosing?
Let's just go through it. Let's just
do it. Okay, would you rather spend your money on your wedding venue or a live band?
Wedding venue, for sure. Hands
Really?
down. Yeah, because that's going to be the central part of your entire day.
Interesting. I know you love a live band.
I do, but you can't put all your money to that. Where are you going to have that band? You need a place.
Okay, next one. And I know your answer, and I'm already kind of bummed. Wedding cake or photo booth?
Oh, for sure, photo booth. It's an experience. It's super fun for your guests. Nobody wants the cake, Tessa.
Stop it.
Disgusting.
Everybody wants the cake, Joe. Okay, would you rather spend your money on good food or gorgeous decor?
Ooh.
That's a hard one.
Not really. Food. All the way food.
Food for me too.
Food. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Good food makes good memories. Bad food makes really unfortunate, awkward memories. Right?
I mean, I agree with you for sure, but I definitely have done weddings where they pick decor over food.
Right.
But you and I are on the same page.
Yeah. For photos, of course, I'd like the decor, but for your overall experience for a wedding, you got to have good food.
Agreed. Are we twins?
We are twinning right now.
Okay. Would you rather spend your money on flowers or transportation for your guests?
Flowers, for sure.
How are your guests going to get there?
They have cars, they have resources, Uber, whatever.
Destination?
Lyft,
What
all that
if
stuff.
everyone's out of town? You're going to make all of your guests pay to shuttle all the way out?
Yeah, they paid for their airplane. They can figure it out.
That's really interesting. I would have picked transportation. For me, it's always about the guest comfort.
Flowers make everything look pretty. I like pretty.
Okay, last one. And this is a tricky one.
All right, what do you got? This doesn't sound good by your heckling.
I know.
What do you have?
Because I know your answer.
Okay.
Would you rather spend your money on a wedding planner
Uh-huh.
or a photographer?
Oh, that one is easy. And it's not a wedding planner. We capture memories. We document moments. We are the one material takeaway you have from your big day. Your planner, they're helpful, but you might forget them. You'll never forget your photographer.
Wedding planners are your insurance. You're spending so much on your wedding day. Don't you want someone to just be there to make sure it all comes through and it all happens as you envisioned? We are the dream makers.
Actually, that's really interesting. I think this is super helpful because I think these are some questions where it's if I'm the client, the photographer is going to be the person that I book before I book the planner. But for others, it's the planner is the thing that you should book first. Hire that person. I think your game is really helpful.
I know.
Right? It does
Thank
make you think about what should you prioritize? And it should be your photographer.
You're wrong. And I think that's the point of my game. It's really, right, depending on what your budget is, you may not be able to pay for everything that you want. So how do you pick what's more important? Or understanding that there is not a right order for every single wedding. It's what are your priorities? What is your budget? And figuring out how to make it work. With this game, I'm not saying you have to choose wedding planner or photographer. It is if you want both, how do you make that work? Is there something else in your budget that you can let go of? Or are there ways that you can compromise and get a little of both? So really taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, looking at your budget, looking at your vision, we can then figure out what are the vendors that you need to book and in what order.
I think in that same breath, Tessa, we have to acknowledge this. There are things that every wedding must have. There are the essentials. So, you're talking about the venue or the band. You can't have the band without the venue. So you have to have that, right? So I think in that same breath, there are always going to be categories that you absolutely need to book. You have to have your venue. You do have to have food, I think. I think that's not something that you can take off the table. Do you have to have a photographer? You don't. You should, obviously. That would be weird if you didn't.
No one needs a photographer.
Okay, so let's get into this. Let's actually break this down. So let's start. Let's see if we can come to some kind of consensus about what is the pecking order. What are the most important places to start? Okay, we've already figured out we have X amount of money to spend. We have our budget set.
Right.
Now we're ready to start checking those boxes, going through and booking vendors. What is number one for you?
So my number one almost always is going to be your venue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because your venue is going to determine your date.
Sure.
What is available, right? If you have a dream for this venue, if it's not available, you're going to change your date, right? So really the venue is almost always the number one vendor booked.
That's interesting. I'm kind of surprised you said that because you are a wedding planner.
Right.
And so sometimes I feel like some of our couples want to start with a wedding planner because they can help them find the venue and sometimes find the best venue for their budget. So if they know their budget, they can weed out some venues that just wouldn't work for them.
So funny that you say that because I was going to say that and then I thought you were going to judge me. So I didn't say it. But really, if you look, wedding planner and venue are the top two and they kind of go hand in hand. Like I would say half my clients have not picked a venue and half of them have. But again, really wedding planner and venue are the top one that kind of flip back and forth just in terms of if they have a dream and they love this venue and they're already booking it, then they'll book the venue and then a wedding planner. If they're starting off kind of at scratch and they have no idea what they want and they're all over the place and they need help, they will book the wedding planner first.
Does this hurt your feelings though? But some couples don't really want a wedding planner. They don't feel like they need one. They want to do all of this themselves. They want to reach out to the venue. Sometimes they don't have a wedding planner.
That does hurt my feelings. But I understand. It's okay.
So in that case, venue. So if you're trying to do it yourself, you might not have your wedding planner. I think we're always on the same page about this. If you have it in your budget, a wedding planner just makes everything so much simpler. But again, bringing it back to budget, if that's not the stars in the sky for you, then venue is the first place. Venue sets the date, which sets everything else in motion, where you can start talking to everyone else. Here's the date. If you don't have the date, don't start contacting anybody else because it's totally fruitless to start contacting people who may or may not be available on the date that you selected. And that happens. We start talking to somebody prematurely. They choose a date that we're already booked on. There's nothing we can do.
It's kind of funny because as a wedding planner, we are constantly talking to couples that don't have dates, but that's the nature of what it is, right? So I always tell people I'm just an extension of your close friends and family where you have to work around our dates. And so it's funny hearing it from you as a photographer. It's a different time of their planning where in the beginning, we all kind of work together. We have no date, but we're going to work on it together.
That's actually really true. I never thought about it that way. But you're ground zero for a lot of couples. So that makes sense.
It also means I'm just more popular than you. Maybe, I don't know.
No, I don't know. We'll see.
One thing that I did want to add with regards to wedding planning is if you're not booking it in the very beginning, it might be very well because you're looking for more of a day of. So you're not looking at a planner a year in advance. You're looking closer to 6 months to 3 months ahead where you want someone to wrap it up at the end. So you wouldn't book that person first on your list.
Okay, Tessa.
Yes, Joe.
You got hired. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And your couple has a venue and a date.
Yeah.
What's next? Because they're stressing out. They're like, I got to book this. I got to finish this. I got to get these vendors booked. I got to get this wedding planned. They're stressed out. Where do we go?
So what we try to do, right, is have a sit down and just kind of chat with them of what are your priorities. There's a couple ways that we can go, right? Depending on the venue. Again, if we are at a hotel or banquet hall where it's more inclusive, you're going to check off a lot of things automatically through the hotel. Your bar, your catering, your dishware, your chairs and tables, like those things are part of a hotel, a ballroom, something like that. So a lot of these things that people consider basics, right? Your needs. Why wouldn't you have a table, a chair, whatnot? If you're renting your venue as a park, you have to bring in all these things.
Right.
So if that's the case, right? So again, depending on your venue, if we're at an outdoor venue where you have nothing but grass, we have to focus on rentals. That has to be your priority. You need to have those basics, right? Tables, chairs, linens, plates, forks, knives, lighting, right? Power. So there's a lot of things that we have to think about that if we were at a hotel, we wouldn't have to worry about.
Okay, so it kind of makes me think, Tessa, like a little bit of an analogy of like a food pyramid, right? So the venue would be the bottom, the base of the food pyramid, right?
Sure.
Or whatever you want to say.
I can see that. Yeah.
You know, and so if your venue is a hotel, there's a lot of things that are included with that. If your venue is an estate or an outdoor open air venue where you have to bring everything in, that's a real small part of the base. And you have to build it, right? You have to build with those rentals and those chairs and linen and all that sort of stuff. Is that right? Does that make sense? Is that a good analogy?
I mean,
is it a weird
it's
analogy?
a weird analogy, but I mean, I get you.
Okay.
I get you. And that's exactly what it is, right? So there are certain things that with one venue, we don't need to worry about. Others we do. And so again, that will determine our next steps in the next order of booking vendors.
And how you're building.
And how you're building your pyramid.
And how you're building your pyramid. Okay. Yeah.
Right?
And that's the foundation. That's the base, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Somehow I don't know how wedding photographer is on the top of the food pyramid. Like, what? I want to be on the top, but I don't think that's the order.
But don't you think it's at the bottom?
It
Like, right, the
is.
pyramid.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like you said, the pyramid bottom is the first. So you want to be at the bottom of your
I
pyramid.
just want to be
right?
on the top, though. I don't know.
So, okay, let's at this point say venues booked,
Okay.
right? If we're at an outdoor venue or a venue that requires a lot of needs, the rentals would be next.
So would you call this a needy venue?
Needy. Yeah.
needy
So the
venue,
needy
okay.
venues, right? A lot of these outside venues also don't include food and beverage. So you need to look at a caterer. You need to look at bar. So those would come next as well. So
What about electricity even?
yeah. So power is part of it, right? So
Generators, that sort of thing.
all of that stuff. So all of those things have to be considered before we get to the fun stuff, is what I like to call it, right? You need to have your food, your drink, your rentals, your power.
That is really boring stuff, actually. I would be like, oh man, this is your job. This is what you have to do.
I have so many clients that are like, when do we get to the fun stuff? I don't want to talk about how many plates I have to order.
Yeah. But you can't have a DJ without power.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so I think that's kind of one of, how many tents do we need? What size tent? Do you want a white? And so there's all of those things that you have to do to build the base of your pyramid.
It's almost like we're not building a pyramid. And I think maybe that analogy isn't right. It's more like we're building a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay. And
We need the foundation.
You need the foundation. I want to be the comfortable couch that you
You're like the
just cruise
fancy
in.
draping.
Oh, the fancy draping.
The fancy doorbell. At the
Okay,
front.
I like the house. Okay, so we have the foundation. We're putting the walls up.
Right.
Okay.
So again, right, the house can come two ways. Number one, it can be a prefab,
Yep.
right, where the hotel has everything you need and you just walk in and you just kind of do the fun stuff. You're
Walls,
decorating,
electricity, everything.
right?
Yep.
Versus building from scratch and you're literally building everything on your own.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Okay.
Are we getting okay?
Yeah.
So our analogy has gotten better.
It's gotten better. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So now let's kind of assume that we've kind of created the prefab and the built house from scratch, and now they're both the same. We've got the foundation. Now the fun stuff starts.
Okay. Let's start with fun. What's fun? Like, who gets to be the first fun vendor?
So, the fun vendor, it really kind of depends on my couple. So this is where things can go in multiple directions. And we've talked about this previously. Again, like, what is their priority? Where do they want to spend their money? Is it photography and videography? Is it entertainment? So DJ, photo booth, band, whatever. Is it decor? So is it their florals? Is it the additional rentals, right? So
Is it the bar service?
well, we've already booked bar. That was part of the foundation of the house.
Okay, so we're at the fun stuff then. We're
Excellent.
getting into here's where it gets to be fun. You start to do your cake tastings, which I think for a lot of our couples, that's like a highlight, right?
So you do love cake.
No, I don't, but but it's like, we're doing our tastings. Like, this is like, we're not talking about electricity anymore. We're talking about like, what flavors do we like? We can do a cocktail tasting, all right? You're doing those things. Let's talk about that. So let's break that down. I think there's fun vendors that are priority vendors. And then maybe there's fun vendors that are like on the bottom of the list. So let's talk about, and I'll just give you an example, cake, right? I know you love cake.
I do love cake.
But a bakery can make 100 cakes for 100 weddings on the same day.
Okay, hold on though. This is the problem. They can make 100 cakes, but they can't deliver 100 cakes. So you will often, hear me out, get to this point where you order this fabulous 4-tier cake and they're like, hey, by the way, you have to pick it up. No one's going to pick up a cake like that. That is a recipe for disaster.
I want to share one thing about me and my business. I am the only piece of cake. Like, you can't book me for 100 weddings. I'm available only once on a wedding day. A bakery can service more than one wedding. Our company can only do one. So again, like if you're planning a popular date and let's say I'm your jam, I'm like the person that you want to book. I feel like those types of vendors, and we can talk about what are those categories. Those are to me the next essential vendors you want to book. I may be, and the category being photography, videography, I might not be anybody's cup of tea. Like some weddings, we don't care about photography. We don't really care about videography. We don't care about these things. But for others, and again, we talk about that priority, that essential, and like this is the most important thing to us. I might be that number one. We want to lock in this person for this date. We are their number one choice. That's something that you want to make sure that those people, those businesses are available on your date. And if you're waiting too long, very good chance we're not going to be available. But if you're a year out, there's a good chance we're going to be available for your wedding date. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think it's also, though, acknowledging the fact that certain categories like photography, there are businesses like yourself where it is one of a kind and you do one wedding a day. But there's also other photography companies that do multiple weddings a day, right? They have many shooters.
Yeah, and they're horrible.
And
Can I say that? No, I do think, okay.
It's the same with wedding planners. Some companies, it's one person and they can do one wedding a day. Others have a big team and they can do multiple. I think what's important is as you go through your planning, starting to figure out what you like. And it is true. You bring up a really good point is if you are a one-of-a-kind person business, get those booked ASAP.
And I think there's a lot of those categories, right, that are one of a kind. So you're right. So there's a huge scale of businesses. So some wedding DJs have like 20 different DJs and it's like whoever is available is who you get. I think for weddings, and this is me personally, I think you want to find those vendors that you connect with, right? Because those are going to be the people that you're going to be surrounded by, those personalities, those talents. You don't want just to be randomly surprised by someone, right? And so like for me, I think it is about curating those talents for your wedding day. For every wedding, there is always those priorities, those must. I want this particular DJ. I want this particular band. I want this particular, whatever it is, book those next. Tessa, I feel like our conversation is a little abstract right now. Let's go through the list.
Okay.
So we have a list of maybe 15 core vendors that typically get booked at a wedding. I want to hear from you. If you have a year to plan, what is your pecking order for what you would say would be most important for your wedding?
For my wedding.
Not for your wedding, but for a wedding.
I mean, again, I feel like it's really dependent on my couple. Are they spending money on photo or flowers? Like, what's their budget? What's their order? But if I was to just say, here's a generic order that I think would work for most people.
Let's hear it.
It would be wedding planner.
So
you knew I was going to say that. I know you knew I would. I'm very vain.
I mean, I didn't agree with it. You're vain, but like, yeah.
You did say it was a test. You failed. So wedding planner, your venue, rentals, assuming that we're at a venue that would require rentals.
Sure.
Caterer.
Okay.
Bar, photography.
So caterer, bar is before photographer.
In my opinion,
yeah,
yes.
Okay, go for it. It's your list. It's on my list.
Are you going to give it? I'm going to allow you to give your order after. Can I give mine first?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to put photo and video together. Although not everyone values them equally, I'm going to put them in one circle right now.
Okay.
Okay, so photo and video. And then DJ/live band, whatever you choose. Flowers, cake, hair and makeup, officiant.
So cake before your officiant. Like you can't get married without an officiant, but cake before then.
Well, you can't have a wedding without cake. So...
Okay, all right. It's your list. Go for it.
Transportation, stationery, so your invitations and your table numbers and whatnot. And then photo booth and other miscellaneous items.
Okay, I like it. All right, good. Mine's a little different.
I'm interested.
Okay, let's talk about my list then.
Okay.
I would love to be as equally vain as you.
Hey!
And put photography on the top of the list.
I'm not vain.
I mean, you said it. I didn't. I just agreed with you saying it.
I was hoping that you would like deny it or like...
Venue first. Or your planner. I can go.
See?
Yeah, if you have it in your budget, planner. But venue and planner.
Thank you.
Number 2, photographer.
Wait, so you're saying venue and planner are number 1?
Yeah,
they're
venue
both
and
number
planner
1.
are number 1. Photographer is number 2.
Wow,
Yeah.
Joe.
Because
you're
I think,
bold.
well, I think like a lot of these other things, like rental companies have multiple tents, like, you know, but like I'm only one person, you know what I mean?
That feels vain to me.
It sort of does. It sort of does. But it is.
It's valid. It's valid.
It is a big pet peeve of mine when someone's like, I love your work. And you're like, I would love to be your photographer, but I'm booked, you know? And so like, I think photography is a really important decision that I hope people make early on, because you just hate to hear it like you're not available or whatever. Okay, so yeah, I agree with you. Video sometimes is, again, is it a priority for people, you know, or is it not? I think that becomes something that's lower down the list for couples. I know that a lot of times for our business, that gets added on later down the road. I don't know why. I think that videography is awesome, but I understand. Next for me, this is weird, but I'm going to go bar first before catering.
Of course you would.
Because I know there's some really amazing bar services. You know, we had Chad on from Stir Beverage. They can't service a ton of weddings. You want to have your rock star vendors there. Catering, yeah, there also are some rock star caterers that you want to have, and they can only service so many. But for me, like, good bar makes good wedding. I'm going to go bar, then catering.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
And you're saying, though, and I just want to make sure we're clear, that photo is more important than your food and drinks.
Yes.
Perfect. No judgment. Just keep going.
All right. Then moving on from that, okay, you have your rentals. We'll put the rentals next after that for me. You do need to book your tents and your electric and your plates and your linen and all that stuff. But again, like, I don't think it's that exciting. Okay, my order goes a little bit different here for this. I put officiant next.
Wow.
Yeah, because I think, you know, a really great officiant, they're hard to come by, and you want to have that perfect fit for your wedding. They're going to be a centerpiece of your ceremony. They're next for me. Then hair and makeup. Hair and makeup too, again, like...
Because it ties so closely with photography.
Yeah, I think it does. And again, like, I know that some of my favorite makeup artists, they're boutique small businesses. They can only do one wedding a day, or maybe they can only do 2 weddings a day, but you want to have the very best vendors that you connect with. Moving on down, florists, whatever. Transportation, even lower on the list.
Wow.
Yeah, stationery, you know, again, like a lot of the stationery companies, they can do multiple things. They can prepping it in advance. You don't have to really trip on that. You do need to get it out though. And it should be part of your budget, but it's not so critical. Photo booth, next. Specialty rentals, like super cool lounge furniture, next. And at the very bottom of the list is your cake.
What? You
Because you don't really need it in the first place.
You seriously hate me. Why? I love cake.
I mean, it's just, again, like a lot of companies can do multiple cakes, and you might have to pick it up yourself, whatever, but like, it's not that, just skip it, you know, and put the money in the bar.
Can we agree to disagree on this?
We can.
We cannot get on the same page about this. I keep trying, but we're not there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But again, I think just to kind of recap, we really want you to make a list to go through, and you can even take our list of, you know, all the different vendors and prioritize. What are those services that are super important to you? So if it's having a live band, put that at the top of the list and check that box first. And maybe the photographer is, you know, lower on the bottom. Maybe they fall into like the cake category for you. Or whatever it is. But I think it is, like, for me, I think what our most helpful piece of advice is to prioritize that list of must-haves. We always talk about that list of must-haves. You know, your venue and your wedding date are essential. All those other things, like, they're going to be different for each of our couples. And then take your time. You know, like if it's super critical and super timely, book those people first. And if it's not, then, you know, you have some more time to like play around. And, you know, again, like I like to go back to this whole thing about like the fun part. Go and do those food tastings and take your time and find out what you really like. You know, again, it is a lot of fun. Those are really fun things to do as a couple.
And I think you bring up a good point. Something to think about is if you are falling in love with a certain photographer or a different vendor where they are the sole business, it is their name, they are the ones that show up, prioritize booking those, because if they book up or once they get one booking, they're done. Your wedding day is off the table for them.
You know, it's really interesting. I've had this happen before, and it's super flattering when it happens. A client will come to me and they'll say, hey, I love your photos. I really want to book you for my wedding, and I'm not available. And they'll move their date for us.
Oh,
and
you
that
feel
feels really
so good, huh?
But you don't really want to have to do that.
No, you
know?
don't. And it's funny because I've seen that happen. For me as a planner, a lot of times we go in knowing that the date will be moved to all of our schedules. But I have seen it with photographers or caterers where they have moved the date to accommodate everyone's schedule. You have to, right? If this is your priority, if you were like, I love this photographer, I have to have him, we will shift everything to accommodate that. And that's why creating a list of priorities before you start booking vendors is really important.
I agree with you 100%.
Thank you.
Gosh, Tessa, did this feel like a really boring episode to you?
No.
Kind of felt a little bit to me. Like, let me just say this, and I want to just end on this note. Like, planning the wedding should be a lot of fun, and like, I do love, like, when we get to meet with our couples and like get to know about their wedding, there's a lot of excitement. And I think each of the vendors that you're working with throughout each of those steps, have fun with it. Planning the wedding, if you do it right, you have enough time. You have a lot of time to plan that one epic day. That's why so many of our couples start planning a year and a half out. So they have all that time to vet all those vendors, to meet them, to find that rockstar team. These are the people, these are the businesses that are going to be your ride or die people on your wedding day. And it's super fun when you put together your dream team. It's so fun when it all comes together on your wedding day and you just get to show up and enjoy like what you created, all of your planning coming to life. So I know that a lot of this is overwhelming, but it's actually a lot of fun.
And the point is, right, it's overwhelming. That's what we want to do, is help break it down and make it a little more bite-sized, prioritize versus trying to hit everything at once. It will make the planning process a lot easier, a lot smoother, and a lot more stress-free.
Perfect. All right. Thanks everyone for listening today. And we hope this helps making your wedding planning a little bit easier, a little bit more fun. And as always, send us your questions. We'd love to answer them on an upcoming show. And we will see you guys real soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Unveiling Paradise.
If you enjoy our show, please follow us and rate us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would really mean a lot.
And don't forget to also get on our mailing list and follow us on Instagram. Just do it already.
Until next time, this is Tessa.
And this is Joe.
And don't forget, your happily ever after
is just a plane ride away.